Hello, my creative friends. I'm going to be sharing another draw along with you tonight. We're going to be doing Santa. I haven't done a Santa yet in watercolor. I don't know if I did an acrylic one either this year so far, so I thought it'd be a good time to do this one. I love this shape of, like, it looks kind of like a half moon with that night sky and a little bit of the snowflakes in the background. I'm going to be using some crayons to create some of the looks in the back. It kind of acts like a wax resist. These happen to be confetti ones, but you can use just a regular white one, or even a wax one works great too. And I'm going to be using my set of watercolors tonight. I'm going to be using is the Paul Rubens, and I have a few colors in an inexpensive tin I have for the face colors that I like to use. I'm going to be using this one too. It really doesn't matter what colors you use. Spend a tiny bit more money on your watercolor paper and just buy the watercolors you can afford. I'm going to be using the Canson watercolor paper tonight, the student grade, 140 pound. It's considered a student grade, but you can still get some good results with it. So I'm not using 100% cotton. I'm just using more of a student grade, but Canson is my favorite one. I'm not going to be showing the drawing steps tonight, but if you belong to my sketchbook membership, that's where I host all of the line drawings for my drawings. So they're going to be there. You can check out the link inside of the description box to go over there and check it out. It's very reasonably priced, easy to join, and I love those who have decided to join my membership and support my page that way. I so appreciate you doing so. So here I've traced mine. I love using a tracer too. I draw it once and then I use my tracer to go right ahead and copy them and make a lot faster job of that. It really works great. Like if you want to do this in acrylic paint instead of using watercolor, or perhaps you want to do it in two different mediums, or maybe you'd like to do a second try. It's nice to be able to just trace the drawings and make that go. So that's what I like to do too. I love to use my tracers as well. Now to do the, let's talk a little bit about doing the beard and doing this process. I'm going to be using, this one I did use some of the wax crayons on, but I think I'm not going to do that this time. I'm thinking I want to use, just use my color underneath, the light shades of gray and blue to create the depth. And then I'm going to come back over with my Uniball pen and add some white on top of there. I also have a little bit of gouache that I could use, my white gouache. I'm thinking I'm going to add a little bit more of that instead of doing the color crayons in the beard. The color crayons work great for the background, but the thing is you can't put the mixed media elements over it as well. So this time I'm just going to put my dark areas in with my colors, with my watercolor, and then I'll be putting that highlights over there. Check out these little eyes. Aren't those just really super cute with the dark shadows a little bit off to the set side? We're going to make those eyes look like they're a little bit back into the head instead of just popped right out there. Add that little extra bit more detail to bring this to life. Well, let's go ahead and start. I'm going to go ahead and start with my red, and let's work on a red hat. Now my reds, I do have a whole line of reds here that come this direction. When you get a set, you should make a color chart so you know what your colors are. I'm going to be working with this one with like scarlet and red cadmium is where I'm going to be kind of sticking with my reds. With watercolor, you always start with your lightest shade first and then work your way dark, because you're painting the shadows. So I'm going to be starting this way and then building that up. Watercolor always wants to travel where the paper is wet. So I'm going to go ahead and wet my hat here in this area. I've got a little bit of color in there so you're able to see where I'm putting my water. I'm going to go irregular along this hat line. So I'm going to break it up so I don't have such a straight line. When I did mine first, I was going to do a different treatment and I made it more straight, and I really want to play with this line a little bit. So I'm going to add some water here to this and just break up that line so it's not just so solid. And I'm going to be doing a wet on wet technique. So my paper is wet and I'm going to be putting in wet color. So I'm going to come in with my orangish red. Ooh, isn't that fun to see that move? Reds move a lot sometimes, and that has to do with the the amount of tint that's in there, the coloration. So I'm gonna let that just float. But isn't that a fun thing to watch? And I'm gonna let that follow the water and dry in there. And then I will go ahead and do another layer. Watercolor is always going to dry slightly lighter. So what we're seeing now isn't what it's gonna look like in just a few minutes when this dries. This isn't 100% watercolor or 100% cotton paper, so it's gonna dry super fast. Or faster, I guess. So you see I have that irregular line there, and I wanted that look, so I'm going to be creating that fur there. So what I want to do now is drop down an area that's not close to my red. What if I put a water or a color next to this, this is going to flow into it because this would be wet and whatever's next to it is wet. That's going to travel that way. So I want to pop down an area and work on something that's not quite so close to my wet area. So I'm going to move down and let's start here with the beard. Now for my beard, I'm going to be working with some colors, probably in this burnt brown color, maybe a little bit of coal black. I'll be watering these colors down. I want them fairly light. So I'm going to start here. Let's turn my pan this way. And I'm going to be working some shadows in first. So I'm going to come in and add a little bit of water to here. So this is going to be real washy looking. And I'm going to come in with just a little bit of this. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. Now I could even go lighter than that if I wanted to. I could add a little bit of water into this and coming in here. So in the end, I'm going to want a white beard. I'm going to leave some really bright whites because I know I want to have some bright whites, but this would be my shadow areas. So I'm going to come in and add just a few little shadows. Of course, this is going to dry lighter. Here we go. I got some sort of little piece of something that I didn't want there. Let's add a little bit on that area. Now let's come down here and add some. So I'm stroking in the way the hair would be growing on my beard. So I want to make sure that I'm creating that same line work of the way that the beard would. Now this is my lip, so I definitely want to have a shadow underneath that area. And I'm going to be stroking this in. I could maybe even switch up to a bigger brush. We're going to be doing that. And because I'm putting my mixed media white on the top, I'm going to be bringing some brightness in that way. Okay, so we're having a little bit of it here. And I'm going to take a little bit of, Payne's gray as well. I like that color, that bluish kind of color. I don't have an open spot in my tray here this evening. Let's see. Do a little bit of it here. Instead of maybe doing black, I could add a little bit of this blue. And I can come in when it's still wet and get those colors to mix just a tiny bit. Again, I want to leave some bright areas so I'm not covering them all up. Tap, tap, tap. Okay, let's put a little bit on his eyebrows too. I'm going to tap just a little bit of that color up there. This is kind of a mixed color, maybe a little bit on his hair too. And I know I have the side beard here. I'm going to come in and add just a little bit of that color there. And I'm going to stroke it the same way that it would be growing. Let's add that in there. Okay, now I'm going to stop and let that dry. So I'm not going to go any farther with that. Let's take a look at my hat. Oh, that looks kind of cool with that in there. Now, for my bell, I did use a little bit of silver metallic color here. I'm going to come into this little pan here. It's got some silver in it. And I'm going to start laying some of that on there. Metallic watercolor. It doesn't look too shiny when it's wet. The color really does come to life after it dries. So I'm just going to pop that in there and let that dry. And we'll see what we come up with that. And then I'll add the shadowing on top of that too. Okay, so let's let that dry. All right, let's add a little bit more red. I'm liking the way it's drying. I love those little lines that are happening on there. Let's pick up that next shade of red. So I'm going to pop down a color And let's add a little bit of darker color to that. So I'm going to come in. Now my paper is dry, so this is going to be more of a damp, wet on damp. So my paper is still a little damp. It's not completely dry, so I'm going to get a little bit of softer lines happening because it's still, you know, damp, but I want to add that next shadow color onto my hat. So I'm looking at creating some pattern, but not covering everything up that I had just put on. So the top rim of my hat is going to be the brightest, lightest area. And I'm wanting to make sure I still have kind of a soft line here. I'm going to be adding some more water, so I'm not ending up with that harsh, dry line of just straight across. Okay. Let's let that dry and see what ends up happening there. Put a little bit. I could end up adding a darker even here, like even more darkness here on that side, just to give it that feel of that it's coming around. Okay, let's let that dry. I won't go any farther. All right, let's work a little bit on his face, and I'm just going to choose kind of this light flesh tone color here is what I'm going to choose. I do have some golden and rust colors here, and I'm going to just kind of mix that color in there, and I'm going to start doing his face on this end. My beard should be fairly dry, and this is the color that I'm going to use on the big part of his face. His nose color, I'm going to be making that a little bit more pink. We're going to be adding some shadows here real quick around his eyes while my paper is still wet. Okay, so we have it nice and wet. So let's pick up a little bit of this rusty color here off to the side. And now let's just tap a little bit onto the edges here to give it more of a shadow line. I'm looking for a soft line. I don't want it to be super hard, like, oh, there's a line there. And I'm going to tap some underneath his hat, like so, bringing it down a little bit. If your lines become a little too harsh, you can add a little bit of clear water to your area and do it that way. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of this reddish brown here. So I'm going to have a little bit of red, a lot of water, and I'm going to tap the outside of my eye. So I'm going to come in and just use the tip of my brush and tap. Now if my paper's too dry, that line is going to stay super harsh, and I don't want it to be harsh. I'm looking for a light color, and I want it to kind of blend out. This is going to be my shadow line around my eye. So I can come in, now rinse my brush, give it a tap with just a little bit of water left on there, hit that edge again, and soften that line a little bit because I want it to be nice and soft. Okay, so we're going to do that same color again. This is just using the tip, a light bit of color, and I'm going to come on the inside, but this time I'm only going about halfway up. And I'm going to tap my color. So we're kind of doing the same as what I was doing with the acrylic paint. I'm doing it with my watercolor. So we're going to just tap it there, add a little bit there. Now I'm going to wet my brush again. We're going to take a little bit of that color, really water it down again. And this is going to go underneath his eyes, and we want just the tiniest bit underneath his eyes. Just like when I say when we do the acrylic, if you get too dark underneath his eyes, Santa looks a little tired. It looks like he has dark circles underneath his eyes, so you want to go really light. You can rinse your brush out, just have a tap bit of clear water, hit that end, and let that dry. Okay, so let's let that dry a little bit, see where it ends up, and we'll probably be adding another layer of color to that. Now to do Santa's nose, I'm going to be going into, let's see if I can find the color here. I believe it's this color here. It's kind of a rosy red color. I want it different than his hat. I don't want it the same as his hat. And I'm going to just pick up a little bit of that color. And I think my paper is fairly dry here. If yours is still wet, give a chance for it to dry before you do this next step, because you don't want your pink nose to run all the way up there. And I'm going to come in and give his nose a little bit of tap just with the end of my brush. It's got quite a bit of color in there. If you got too much, go ahead and take some out. You can always add more in. It's just, it's harder to add, take it out. And I'm going to tap, tap, tap with the end of the brush and give him some little cute, sweet A little sweet nose there. Now let's go ahead and add some of those cheeks on. I'm going to use the same color. I'm kind of watering it down so it's not super strong. So here I've got it watered down. This color might have some white in it. If it looks kind of pastel, it means it has some gouache or white in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and give him some soft cheeks. So I'm going to come in and tap this color here. I want it fairly watery. Again, I can always go darker if I need to. It's just harder to lift it. So I'm going to be tapping it and then just letting that dry. And that's how this getting those kind of interesting line marks, as my colors are going to dry as they do. So go ahead and lay it in, and we can always add another layer. We just can't necessarily take it out. Okay, so now let's go ahead and check. I believe that's still pretty wet, so I need to let that dry. I'm going to take a look at my eyes, and perhaps I'll give this paper a dry really quick because I want to add some color to my eyes. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a dry. Okay, I'm going to be picking up some of that brown color, kind of that grayish brown. I consider it, this one's called like a burnt brown color. I'm going to be picking up a little bit of that color first. So I'm going to be taking some of this burnt brown here. I'm going to make sure it's watered down. I don't want a lot of color on my brush, a lot of water. So I'm going to make sure I give it a tap on my paper towel before I lay it down because I want to be able to control that color. And I'm going to be putting that in to the eyes on the outside. It works good just to give it a tap. You're going to have a little bit more control of where your color's going. So I'm going to be doing it on the outside. If I can, I'm going to try to leave a little white highlight. If you don't leave a white highlight, don't worry because you can always add it in with your uni ball pen if you have one of those, or even a dot of acrylic paint. The one thing about using the acrylic paint is that it's going to be shinier than what your watercolor is, but if that doesn't bother you, you can most certainly use acrylic paint. Okay, let's leave that a little bit of tap, tap, tap. Let's pick up a little bit of the black while it's still wet. I'm picking it up just right out of the pan. I'm going to give it over here. Now my paper's wet because my brown is wet. And I'm going to come in and just tap it on the outside here. A little bit of black. So this is on the outside of that eye. I need to do it on the inside of this eye. There we go. All right, and we're going to kind of do a dance back and forth. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of that brown again. You could go down to the red brown too and add a little bit of red brown into this little guy's eyes. We're going to tap, tap, tap. Okay, let's tap, tap, tap. A brown-eyed Santa, right? Okay. All right. Let's stop right there and see how that dries. But he's starting to come to life. He's got a little bit of sparkle in his eye. Now we should pick up a little bit of that pink color too that I used on his cheeks and those other on his nose. Let's pick up a little bit more of that color and let's add that to the bottom part of his lip here. It's a small area, but let's add a little bit of this color here. Would like to have a little white highlight on his bottom lip if we can. Leave a little bit of a highlight. That always looks good. Okay, it looks kind of like he's got lipstick on now, but it's going to dry a little bit lighter. You can always pick it up with your paintbrush if you think it's too bright. We're going to let that dry. It's going to have a little bit of that darker brown in the center here because we need to make this part a little darker. And I'm going to go ahead and add that in now. So this part of his mouth is going to be a little bit dark. Okay, there we go. Now take a look at his whites of his beard, or the light color of his beard, and I'm thinking I'm going to add a little bit more of that blue color. So I'm going to come in, really water that down. I want a light shade of that. Give this a tap so I don't have too much loaded on there. And then I'm going to add a little bit of that blue. And again, I'm going to stroke it in the way that hair would grow. Okay. Now, because I am adding the white mixed media over the top, I don't have to be as concerned. If this was all just watercolor, I would have to be a little bit more watchful of how dark I'm getting. You can do white or look of white with watercolor, and you do get a lot darker than what you think by painting a white area, because what's the best way to paint a white area is not to paint it or not to have it all white. Okay, so there we go. That's looking good. I'm going to give my hat a dry. I have a lot of wet paint right here before I start it, but my eyes are looking really cute. I'm happy with those. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a little bit of crayon to that back, since I'm kind of waiting for things to dry a little bit before I go too far. The confetti colors are interesting. They're kind of a mix of white with something else in them. So they have little flecks of color in them. So this one I believe is, I can't quite read it. A Touch of July, it's called. I don't know what's in there. And I'm just going to be making, maybe it's red, white, and blue. Yeah, that looks like it is. Red, white, and blue little colors in there. Okay, just making little bits of snowflake lines. So it's basically an X with a line in the middle, and then down is what I'm going to be doing. And you could do some little circles as well, or little spirals, look cute. And what I'm going to accomplish by using the crayon, it's going to be a wax resist. So wherever that is in the background there, it's going to resist the color. I'm going to follow this line a little bit here and go all the way around with it. Okay, I think that looks good. And let's add a little bit here. A little bit here. Now I thought I wasn't going to add any to my beard, but maybe I will. Just add a tiny bit. Oh, I'm going to stop. I won't do it there. Okay, make up your mind. I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of the blue, that brighter blue color, or that dark blue color. I'm going to wash it down a little bit, and I'm going to be adding a real faint line here of this blue. So I'm going to give it a tap to make sure I don't have too much. And I'm going to be laying in random shades of this blue to give that underneath quality shadow to the fur. Okay, let's let that dry. All right, now for my background, I laid in all of Payne's Gray, and I think I did 2 or 3 layers of it is what I did for my background. I think I'm going to start with one of those now, and I'm going to be doing a little bit more work on this guy's eyes, so I'm going to be adding more work to that. I'm going to bump up a brush too. I think I'm going to go to a bigger size brush. So this one is a 10. I'm going to get a little bit bigger, get a nice puddle of paint before I start my background. Get this going here. Okay, so that's good. I'm going to start in a small area at the top and then kind of work around. If I have a dry area or need to have a dry area, I like to have it in an area where I know I don't have to be too particular about seeing a dry line. So if I start here, I know that I'm going to be okay. If I have just a small little dry line at the top, that'll be fine. And I'm just brushing it in. I'm doing a real irregular look. I like having, I don't mind seeing my brush strokes. And I'm coming in, but I'm not spending a ton of time brushing next to the areas I painted. Because this is just freshly painted, it's easy to lift these colors. So I want to just get in there, move my brush around, and work on my background. There we go. This is going to dry a lot lighter. I'll easily put another coat on the back. You'll have to let me know in the comments if you like this real-time painting where you're watching as I'm painting and going through it instead of speeded up version and hearing a little bit more of my thought process behind what I'm doing. You'll have to let me know in the comments if you like that and seeing it more slowed down in real time. Let me know if you like that or not. I can do either which way. Slowed down or doing it, doing real time, or actually doing it a sped up version too is fine too. Okay, so let's let that dry. But man, he's looking so cute. I'm gonna go back in and do another layer of dark on my little Santa's eyes. So I'm gonna pick up a little bit more of that dark color, this time a little less water. Okay, so I have a little less water. I'm gonna give my little tap so I don't have too much on there. And I'm gonna darken just a little bit more, tap. And I'm not going for full coverage, so I wanna be able to, you know, see a little bit more of that color on there. Okay, let's let that dry. Now I want to add another shadow to the outside of his face here. So I'm going to take that same color. I just do maybe even just a little bit more of that red brown, water it down a little bit so it's nice and loose. And I'm going to add another layer of shadow. So I've got a pretty loose color. It's more of a shadow color, and I'm going to be laying another layer. But I still want to see some of that original rusty color on there. Okay, a little bit around his cheeks. And then if you feel like your line work like that might be too straight of a line, I could come in and soften that a little bit so it's not too strong of a line. I'm thinking I want a little bit more darkness underneath here. Okay, it looks good. And I want to darken that little spot in the center of his mouth a little bit more. There we go. And I want to darken or brighten or add another layer of that peachy color to his nose. So I want to deepen that color a little bit more because that'll be different than what his cheeks are. So I want it to look a little different color than the cheeks on there, but I still want to keep that little bright area. And I'm thinking I'm going to take a little bit of that color that I just put on his nose, and I want to water it down fairly good, and perhaps add a little bit more of that darker on the edge of his cheeks, like a little shadow area, but making sure that I come back in and then tap it with some water so I'm not getting super harsh lines. The goal is to keep it, you know, soft and washy looking. Okay, I'm thinking that looks good. Let's go ahead and add one more layer to this background. So I'm going to come in with that blue, again, that really dark blue. Payne's Gray. It's a really pretty color. If you get a set of colors, Payne's Gray is a good color to always get in your sets. Now let's go ahead and do this again. So I'm going to come in and work that, and I'm going to turn my brush. So I'm seeing some brush strokes in there, but adding another shadow line. So I know I definitely want to have it darker next to his beard. I want it to pop. And you're also going to, I'm going to be putting some of that pen work over it, and I want it to be that dark feeling where I'm going to be bringing out those little whisker lines. So I want to have it, you know, nice and kind of dark around these areas and not too light, because that will make a difference of what it's going to look like. He is super cute. Love him. Okay. Now I need to do something about the inside of that bell area, and I think I'm just going to pick up some black, and I'm going to just kind of put a line in there, a little bit of a, like an indication that this bell is going, like there's a hole in there. So I want to add just a little bit of detail in there, not a whole lot, but just add a little bit on that little area. All right, let's give this a dry. And I missed that corner completely both times. Both times I missed that area. Let's see if I can't get this going here. This would be really pretty too, to add some salt on it. If you decided you wanted to add a few little granules of salt, that would be super pretty too. Let's give this a dry, and then we're going to start with the mixed media look. Okay, I'm going to be using some titanium white gouache to create some of the white looks on my beard and things. So I'm going to come in and add, and I'm going to be stroking in the area again of like how the beard would be growing. So I'm going to come in with a small little tip brush here, and the gouache has been kind of watered down a little bit. It's on the thinner side. It's going to dry a little bit more opaque. And we're just going to be painting this on top. And if you don't have gouache, you could always try a little bit of acrylic paint. That would work too. And I'm creating that little wispy look to the hair. And I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to be going over it with my Uniball pen. So I'm going to be adding some more finer detail. Uniball ink is going to be different color than what this is. I'm going to go out into there a little bit, out a little ways, so it kind of gives it more of that wispy feel, so I'm not just stuck right into what I painted here or ended up. So I'm going to get a nice little feel of that. His beard is wispy and soft. Give it that look. So just kind of flick it with your, kind of hold my hand or my hand still, and I'm just wisping it with my wrist is still, but my hand is what's doing the motion. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, there we go. Let's add a little bit of it up here too. I'm going to be getting a little finer line when I use the Uniball pen, but this is going to be just a little different look. It's getting that jolly look to him. Come out a little ways. I'm going to be adding a little bit of this too on his eyebrows, so just a little bit of a stroke. Now if your brush isn't thin enough, you might want to do this with your Uniball pen. You could do that too. Okay, so let's leave it at that. We'll give that a chance to dry just a tiny bit, and we can work a little bit with the number 1, the black one, my micron pen, the 01. Let's add a little bit of scribble detail here. I didn't do a lot on my other one, but I'm going to be just doing that loose line work, not doing exact. I'm not trying to trace exactly what I did. This one I did put a little heart in the hat. It's been a while since I've done my little heart. I like doing those little heart lines. You can come across a little bit if you want to add a little bit of a fold line. You could add that in there. I did around the bell. I kind of emphasized the bell a little bit more with the pen because of the darkness around it and the night dark sky. And it had a little bit of a bow at the top here. I'm thinking I might have to, let's see, I guess that'll work. I was thinking I might have to bump up in my pen size, but it worked. You could do a little scribble scrabble, kind of continuous line work where you put your pencil down or your pen down and you just keep on drawing. That looks nice. Let's add some more detail to his eyes. So I'm going to come around and outline them just a little bit. I want them to be, you know, have that kind of, that really special sweet look to it. And okay, give him some eyelashes just to give it a little bit more wispiness to it. Let's put a few little at the top too, a few little scribble bits there. Maybe a little bit here on the eyebrows, just to kind of do a little bit there, a little bit. And I don't think I'm going to put any dark on his beard at all. And then let's come in with the Uniball and add just a little bit more sparkle. So I'm going to come in on the dark side of his eye here and give one little line down like that. And then perhaps maybe 2 at the top just to give it a little bit of highlight. Let's do a little bit of twinkles on his cheek. 2, maybe 3. 2 and then 1 there. If you need to re-emphasize the white on your nose, you can. I'm going to add my white here on his lip because I completely lost it when I did it. And then let's add some line work here. So I want to come in and I'm going to be adding these big strokes that come out with like little dots at the end, just to give it another set of whimsy. We're going to come out, give it that very much that look of whimsy, so you can see how those little line works. Oh, my pen is starting to wear out. I need to get another one. I might have to grab a new one. Let's see if I have another one in here. See if this one works any better. The one thing about the Uniball is I suggest not buying very many at a time. Just buy like maybe one at the most, maybe two, because if you don't use them, they do tend to like dry out and then they don't want to work for you. So use, just buy what you think you might want to use. I'm going to put a few little wispy parts that come in here. So it looks like Santa's got some curls. Yeah, so I suggest just buying one or maybe two of the Uniball pens and then just use them as you go. And I'm going to take some of this and I'm going to make my stars white just to add that little bit of brightness inside of there. This might be, I don't know, if you have a gel pen, it might be kind of cute to add, but I just thought just having the white stars, they would be in his beard, but not necessarily super strong. So I think that looks cute. Let's add a few little smaller wispy lines with my pen and really loosen up that fur line a little bit. Kind of come out. Oh, isn't he cute? Oh my gosh, he's so cute. Maybe throw a little bit of a white highlight there. I'm gonna come in with my Uniball pen and add a few more twinkles this way. Oh, I forgot to write my words, ho, 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 on there. I'm gonna do some little stars with the Uniball pen. It just makes a different white than what is already there. Okay, let's add a few more lines this way, loosening it up as well. Okay, let's write ho 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 in there before I forget. Kind of already almost did. Okay, so H, and then, all right. I'm thinking he looks pretty cute. I think he looks darling. You'll have to let me know. If you do one and you would like to share your Santa, you can come over to my Facebook page. It's all underneath Painting Crafty. You'll see a post for when this is going to go live. Share it underneath there. I love sharing other people's work because it doesn't have to look like mine to be good. And I always think you encourage other people to try. So I love sharing your work. So if you wouldn't mind sharing it, go over there and share your work on there. But I think that looks great. It's always fun to see the differences, even though, because, you know, I can never paint the same 2 times in a row. So I say they're not twins, but they kind of look like they could be related, kind of like cousins. So if you do one, go ahead and share it over there. Well, thanks everyone for joining me this evening. And again, if you're interested in the Ko-fi membership, go ahead and click that link inside of the description box. If you're new to my page and you like doing art and crafts, consider coming over, take a look at what I do. I'd love to have more creative friends join me. Go ahead and like, share, and comment. It does my page wonders if you do. It just helps me get the art out there, and I so appreciate it when you do. Well, thanks everyone for hanging out with me, and hopefully you'll come back next time and you'll create right along with me. Bye now.